I'm going to assume that's a yes.
Yes.
So good. It's 9:30 and I want to be cognizant of time, and we do have a quorum. So I just want to get us started. Good morning. It's a little windy out there, but I think we're all going to be okay. So welcome. My name is Diana Rumsey. I am the current chair of the MCC.
Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator for PPACG, and I actually want to introduce you to somebody in the room who is next to me. Yes, you can see him on the screen. This is Nick. He is a military fellow, and he is going to be with us for the next 7 weeks, I think, 7-8 weeks, working with us as well as others around the state on veteran transportation options. So I'll turn it over to Nick if he can give us a little bit of background of who he is, and press that button with the face. Yeah.
Face. Yes, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Laura's given me a really good pitch on this issue that's going on across the state. And for starters, I'm a logistic officer in the Army, still active duty, and I'll be done in June. So this is kind of like help me transition and kind of change up the mindset, but I'm very happy to be still doing logistics and, doing it for the veterans in the state of Colorado. So I have my way forward and excited to get after it.
So we can just kind of let people kind of popcorn around in the virtual Zoom world and introduce yourself this morning.
Good morning,
Jacob
everybody.
Madsen on
with,
Metro Transit.
Community Intersections.
Chelsea Gonda, the Director of Planning and Mobility with the Colorado Springs Downtown Partnership.
Kristen Amundsen with Goodwill.
Ted Schweitzer, Cripple Creek Transit, Telemobility.
I'm Mark Bowers with Fountain Valley Senior Center.
Good morning, Diana Van Auken, Teller Senior Coalition.
Rosa.
Yes. I didn't know when to jump in. Rosa with the City of Fountain.
Eric, are you on the line? We do have a guest today, and this is Emily. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Emily with the City of Fountain.
And who are you with, Emily?
I'm the City of Fountain Transit.
Awesome. Great. And I think Eric from Invita is on here, so he might have stepped away for a minute. So Eric Esch from Invita. And then who's on the line from Silver Key? That's okay. Y'all can introduce yourself a little bit later.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. So we're just going to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the current agenda as it stands?
So motion. Dick Hyde, so motion.
Do I have a second?
Kristen Amundsen, second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as it stands, and then we will move on. So consent items for this morning, we have the approval of the minutes for the January 24th meeting. Fantastic. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes
Dick Hyde, so motioned.
and a second?
Diana Van Auken, second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the January 24th meeting. So motioned and approved. Any opposed? No? Okay, just checking. All right, moving right along. Public comments and presentations. Doesn't look like we have any. No, well, wait a minute. Nope.
I actually am supposed to be on here presenting, so
I stand
I
corrected.
may be further down. I don't know if I got further down on the agenda. I can't see.
I don't think so. I don't think there were.
So Laura, this is Melissa.
Yes.
We're doing the under training information sharing coordination.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes. Thanks.
There are 2 spots there for you. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any action items?
We do have an action item. It did not make the list today, but we are going to vote on a vice chair. And so we actually have a nomination of Chelsea, who is a part of Downtown Partnership and has expressed interest in potentially being the vice chair. So that is a action item for today. And so I will ask that may have to ask to amend the agenda for today to include that.
So because it's a change to the agenda, we need a motion to put it onto the agenda and then to vote on the actual agenda item.
All right, so our amazing Jared has informed us that we need to have a motion to put that as an action item on the agenda. Do I have a motion to include that action item on the agenda, which would be to introduce Chelsea as a vice chair candidate? Do I have a motion?
Kristen Amundson, motion to add that to the agenda.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Dick Hyde with a second.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have a motion and a second to add the agenda item of adding Chelsea as a vice chair candidate. All right, we're doing great.
We need a vote.
To vote on Chelsea?
No, to vote.
Oh,
We had this first and second, and then we need to.
okay, so, all right. Are there any objections to that action item being added? All right, seeing or hearing none, we will add that action item onto the agenda. Fantastic. Okay.
So then we'll do a vote. I think it would be good for,
All right, so the next piece of the equation will be to have Chelsea introduce herself. And then following that, then we will take a vote and we will move on. So Chelsea.
Hey, everybody. As I mentioned, I am the Director of Planning and Mobility for the Downtown Partnership. If you are not familiar with the Downtown Partnership, we are technically the management entity for 3 separate organizations. One is the Downtown Development Authority. The other is the Business Improvement District. I'm also the Executive Director of that Business Improvement District, as well as Downtown Ventures. All of that is to say that essentially what we work on is community and economic development downtown. A majority of what I do in my position is aligned with city staff. So a lot of the larger developments that are coming downtown, as well as mobility offerings. So interactions with MMT, scooter operators, the bike share, as well as just general walkability downtown.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that introduction. All right. So I will move forward with a motion to vote on the appointment of Chelsea as the vice chair for the committee. Do I have a second? Do I have a motion? I haven't had any caffeine. I gave it up for Lent, so please be gentle with me. Do I have a motion to vote, yes, on the acceptance of Chelsea as the vice chair for the committee?
Dick Hyde, so motion.
Do I have a second?
Diana
Kristen
Van Auken, I second it.
Fantastic. All right, now we will move forward with the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Okay. I'm seeing some thumbs up, some ayes. Any opposed? Okay, seeing no opposed. Any abstentions? Okay. All right. Well, congratulations, Chelsea. You are the new vice chair of the committee. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, Chelsea, for, we kind of coached her a little bit to step into this role. I really appreciate Diana and Deanna and now Chelsea stepping up and helping us kind of move this committee forward in a productive way as leaders. And so I really appreciate you guys taking this on. So yeah, well, let's get started with the rest of it. And that is me. So we have on the agenda 6A, PPACG Military Fellow. For you guys who are on the call, you may recall last year us kind of kicking off the year talking about veteran transportation needs, and not necessarily just needs, but also sort of this odd occurrence that transit providers end up in trying to provide services to veterans and not necessarily knowing what the VA should be offering, what the VSO should be offering in terms of transportation assistance, either through vouchers or direct service. And so that is still kind of a question mark for us as a group, as well as a statewide conversation that's been going on for over a year now. And so what has been great is PPACG is now able to host a military fellow, which we just introduced, Nick Schmidt. And he's going to be basically working from a state level perspective about trying to map out what the needs are, what current offerings are there for military veterans, and then try to figure out with that roadmap how we can create some intersections in services. If you think about it, military veterans, their transportation challenges don't really have borders, right? We typically operate within our own service areas, but the needs of military veterans don't necessarily have those same service areas matching up with their needs. And a good example of this is, say, for instance, a veteran needs to go to Denver from Montrose, right? How do we get that veteran from Montrose to Denver for a surgery or whatnot? And how do we coordinate that with the VA as well as other transit providers to make that trip happen? Same things occur here in Colorado Springs. There's very limited offerings through the VA to get a veteran up to Denver for a larger appointment than what the clinic can provide here. So this has been kind of a systemic issue in the state. We have a statewide what's called CCAM committee, or CMAC committee, sorry, CCAM is different. CMAC committee, which is all the mobility managers from the Council of Governments as well as the MPOs. So MPOs is Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and CDOT. We meet every other month, and this has been a topic for quite some time. So it's been great to have Nick on board. He's here for about another 7 weeks with us to sort of take, a deep dive into this issue. It's been mostly a bunch of people working 15 minutes at a time, trying to juggle it with their other duties to work on the issue. And we just haven't been able to get a lot of it mapped out. So one of the things that I'm asking of this group is just to be open to talking to Nick about your current services in terms of how many veterans or what do you see as the need in your service area for veteran transportation? I'm also going to reach out to this group and say, are you really tracking veterans' needs within your own tracking systems as you're intaking individuals that are needing your assistance? I think that's what's been one of the biggest challenges is we don't really have great numbers out there from our transit providers showing the number of veterans that they're serving so that we can have a larger conversation with the VA about the actual needs that are out there. So just to kind of call out and shout out to you guys to think about how you could start gathering this information for potentially some funding opportunities in the future. So that's sort of the end of that. Is there any, thoughts, questions, ideas around ways that we may be able to support Nick for the next few weeks? All right, I gave you 8 seconds. All right, so we'll get moving along. The item 6B is actually, I'm going to do a short presentation. Oh, I just saw Melissa in the chat. I'm going to do a short presentation on the needs assessment that we completed last fall, and now we're in the implementation phase of a couple of projects. This needs assessment was funded through the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center. It was actually an FTA grant that they were administering. And so one of the challenges since I've started in this job is not necessarily knowing what the actual need is for specialized transportation in our area. It's, as many of you guys know that are on the call, and Jacob probably knows this well from like a large planning exercises, it's really hard to quantify what the needs are because basically you don't necessarily know who's accessing your services. This group has more of a pulse on that because you actually it's not a fixed route service that most of you guys are operating, but you have a good idea of who you're serving, but you may not have a good idea of who you could be serving or some of the service area gaps within your organization. So how you overlap with other organizations to provide services. So there's geographic gaps that we have identified through the needs assessment, as well as sort of gaps that fall within the constructs of how you operate as an organization. So you may not provide services on the weekend or in the early morning or late night. So identified some gaps there that we may be able to work on as a group. That all being said, I've talked a lot about how we will be kicking off the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan very soon. I started that conversation last year thinking it was going to happen last year, but it just did not. So we are kicking off the procurement for that. And the procurement means we're going out to bid for a consultant to help us with that plan. So what this needs assessment is going to help is to complement that plan. Usually, and you guys, some of you guys participated in the previous plan, there's not a lot of direct contact with actual end users through that planning process. And so it was important for us to kind of secure some additional funds to do more of that deeper dive in what the needs are from a customer perspective, and not necessarily just the needs from the provider's perspective. So we'll be taking information from the needs assessment as well as other data that's gathered through the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan, and using that as a baseline for us to talk about as transit providers. How do we address these needs, right? How do we coordinate to address these needs? We have needs within our organizations, but how can we keep the customer at the core focus there? And it's going to give us some action items on how we can work together, because ultimately FTA looks at these things, as well as the AAA looks at these things as coordination opportunities. And if we're not taking those opportunities, then that's something that we need to move forward and kind of overcome. So that's a long intro into a very short presentation that I will be giving today. I will actually be presenting to the board next week on this same topic. And we'll also in the future for this meeting we'll introduce Invita to their group and how they've been working with us on some implementation projects with the additional funding that we received from NADTC. So give me a second and I'm going to pull up I can share, right? Okay. I should be able to. This is a lot easier to do when you have two screens. Sorry, I'm not technology working well today. It's not letting me, there it is. Okay. Okay, can everybody see this? We good? Okay, awesome. So just the purpose of this study, and I'm calling it a study because it's not really a plan, right? We have not identified specific projects for us to tackle. The planning portion of that is really going to come within the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan. So the purpose of this is to conduct a needs assessment to identify transportation needs. It's kind of, given that, as I mentioned before, we don't really have a roadmap for that. And so this was a exercise to help us start building that roadmap. We also talked about how this is going to complement the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan. So complement, provide a tool to that plan. And then lastly, when we do complete the Coordinated Human Service Transportation Plan, we do want to develop implementation projects with additional funding, not just from this NADTC grant that we've already started a couple of implementation projects, but also our funding moving forward with 5310 and AAA funds. The methodology that we used for this study was we conducted focus group meetings. I think I talked about this several meetings ago, how we reached out and did focus groups with older adults and individuals with disabilities in our 3 counties of Park, Teller, and El Paso. These focus group meetings were a unique way in terms of gathering sort of that qualitative data from individuals. And we took the approach of not necessarily doing a survey, a wide survey, but trying to basically interview older adults and individuals with disabilities to truly kind of capture what their needs are through conversation. We also worked with our consultants to do transit propensity mapping. So they did an analysis utilizing similar measures as CDOT utilizes for transit propensity. And so let me define transit propensity for those that may not know what that means, because I didn't really know what that meant until we did this. So transit propensity is basically looking at multiple factors to identify clusters of individuals that may need transit or may already be utilizing transit. So some of those characteristics are low income. We also have I think this would be helpful for you guys to know, the census actually puts together a comprehensive map of individuals with disabilities. So that is something that the census actually provides from a census tract perspective. They also provide, some more details about what kind of disabilities what kind of disabilities individuals have within census tracts. So one of the things that we factored into understanding the transit propensity is that there's some disabilities that are more apt to utilize or need transit than others, right? And so those are some of the factors that we included in the transit propensity data. Our major transit providers that are here on the call actually provided origin and destination information on their customers. So I basically cleaned all of your list of origin and destinations, and we chose 1 month of transit services just to identify different trends of where people are being picked up and where people are being dropped off. So we thought that that would be very beneficial for you guys to see just from a geographic perspective. And then we looked at future demographic data. So if you guys have not gone to the state demographer's website, as well as CDPHE has a lot of data on future trends of our demographics and our service areas, that is a great tool for you guys to utilize so that you can understand moving in the future what may be the needs moving forward. So say, for instance, we have a huge population in Colorado of upcoming seniors, right? So that helps us, knowing that helps us position our programs for that future growth. So transit, some trends of transit needs that we heard from both our focus group meetings, as well as just looking at our service area data. Opportunities to secure transportation for last minute trips was kind of high on the list for everyone. And it's just a identified need just in general if you're looking at the current transit service options, right? A lot of transit providers don't provide transit on the weekends. They also don't provide late night trips or trips that are early morning, right? Because I understand within the constructs of your organizations, that's a staffing, that's an additional staffing need to be able to provide those types of trips, but it's also a need that's been identified by the individual. And so one of the things in terms of last minute trips, many of you guys on the call have, either a 3-day to 2-week notice that you need from a customer in order to provide a service. And that was seen as a big challenge for folks because, life happens, right? Life happens for all of us. And so not having an actual option for a last minute trip kind of was described as putting them in a box. And so that's something that I think is an opportunity moving forward to figure out how we can integrate more of those types of service models into our work. More opportunities for transportation to work, recreation, and social activities. I know that many of you guys on the call are very focused on the medical appointments and trying to get people to those necessary medical appointments. But from a customer perspective, you know, they value that and value your service in ensuring that you are getting them to those essential needs. But kind of a missing need for them is this, you know, everyday life situations that they may have in transportation to work and having consistency of transportation to work. One of the things that's been communicated through these focus group meetings is they are having individuals with disabilities and seniors are having to basically align where they live and where the service is or offered in order to, you know, either get work. So they're having to think about where they're working to make for sure they have the services available to get to that work. So say, for instance, if an individual with disabilities has the potential for a job in the Northeast area of Colorado Springs or El Paso County, where there's not a lot of transit services going in that direction, they may choose not to take that job because of the location and the lack of services available there. That's just an example. That's not, that's a geographic example that I'm giving. But those are some of the things that were communicated. I also mentioned the expansion of transit options for nights and weekends. We've actually had some occurrences in one of our conversations up in Teller County where an individual had to go to the emergency room in Colorado Springs and did not have a ride from the emergency room after they were discharged. And so ultimately, to get back up to Teller County, so ultimately that individual had to be transported to Colorado, the rescue mission, in order to stay within the shelter that night until they could arrange transportation back up to Teller County the next day. So having these sort of options for either emergency late night use, but also if somebody wants to go to the movie, right? So these are specific things that were identified. In some areas, there's no transit options. And so Park County in particular, we have really struggled with getting consistent transit or any transit in Park County. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So there's just some specific areas in Park County and also in El Paso County where there's no transit options. Here's sort of geographic things that we identified in terms of gaps. For El Paso County, there's limited or no fixed route services or paratransit services offered in the northern or eastern part of El Paso County. I know that Envita operates a fixed route service and going out to Cowhan, but there's you'll look and see when I show the maps today, you'll look and see that there's some large areas of transit propensity where we do not have transit providers. And I understand some of those factors of what's driving that from a funding perspective. I know it's been a little bit challenging navigating what funding is available in El Paso County because we have basically two major funders for El Paso County, CDOT and PPACG. And sometimes that the flavor of funding doesn't necessarily meet the need of the geographic area. So we've sort of identified some of those gaps through this assessment. No demand response rides offered in El Paso County, in Eastern El Paso County due to limitations of funding available. Again, the funding flavor doesn't necessarily match up with those needs. So we have typically FTA 5311 funds for outside of the urbanized area. And those funds can only be used for fixed route or deviated fixed route. So it doesn't really provide a lot of funding for demand response rides. So that's, we understand the limitations of providers and why there hasn't been a huge expanse of services into some of these more rural areas in El Paso County. And then Teller County, again, limited fixed route provided by limited fixed route. We do have Ted on here from Cripple Creek Transit, that their transit service is pretty centralized within their area. They do provide some transfers to Teller Senior Coalition to get people further out, either down the hill, what we call down the hill, or down to, you know, things like Walmart and places like that in Woodland Park area for services. We also have Teller Senior Coalition too, that provides a limited fixed route service in Teller County, but that was identified as a potential need of expansion of those services. Limited or no weekend service available. That's one of the things that was discussed in several of our meetings with individuals is just that availability is just not there. And so that's contributed to this thought of seniors and individuals with disabilities that they live in this box. So our limitations as providers have kind of created that box for them. And then limited service for early morning or late evening rides. I already discussed sort of this one-time occurrence that we know about of the individual that could not get back from down in Colorado Springs up to Teller County because of the late night challenge there. And then park, we have limited demand response services. I know that Teller Senior Coalition is kicking off doing some of those services in Eastern Park County, either through a fixed route or a deviated fixed route. So that is great that they're expanding in that area. But there is really no services beyond that other than a small commuter route that goes from Fairplay up into Summit County. So these were sort of the geographic service level gaps. I'm going to stop real quick. Is there anything here that is surprising to you? Hearing none, I'll continue. Our current implementation projects, as I mentioned before, NADTC has provided a small grant for us to do a couple of pilot projects. One of the projects is really pushing forward the mobility guide. We learned from our meetings with individuals that they didn't really know what all the offerings were available to them. They also didn't understand that they could be utilizing multiple service providers. And it's almost a necessity for them to be utilizing multiple service providers because each provider has sort of their own constraints in where they can take a person, right? So it's kind of a trip by trip basis on what their needs are. And so, you know, I'll give an example. So an individual may be able to utilize they may be able to use Metro Mobility services, right? Because, you know, primarily their needs are within that service area that they provide paratransit services. But they didn't necessarily know that they could access Envita or Silver Key or Goodwill or all of our service providers that are on this call for trips outside of Mountain Metro's service area. So if you can imagine being an individual with disabilities, if you think that you can only use one service provider, then basically you're building your whole life around this geographic service area. And so we saw that those were some just opportunities for outreach. One of the things that I'm going to do after this meeting is we actually have kind of been on a pause in printing the mobility guide due to kind of staffing changes as well as my time that's available. But what I'd like to do is give this group another opportunity to do a once over on that guide to let us know if there's any changes that need to be made. I know that there has been some changes that your organizations might have experienced over the past year. So those are things that we can capture before we actually put it into print. Lastly, we're doing a on-demand pilot program with Invita. This is kind of a unique situation, right? We typically, as demand response agencies that are primarily on this call, it's always been, we've operated primarily that people have to call ahead, either, I mentioned before, 3 days to 2 weeks in order to secure a ride that they need. And so, as mentioned before, in terms of the needs that were communicated by participants, is just for quality life purposes as well as emergency purposes, having accessibility in that way is something that was just high priority for them, right? Because you and I, those that don't have to access services for transportation, think about the times that you needed to go to the grocery store and just grab some flour or sugar because you don't have it right at your house to cook a meal. Those are situations that individuals with disabilities and seniors that depend upon transit don't really have the opportunity to solve their problem in that sense. And so these are some opportunities for us to start incorporating and looking at new program service models that we could start implementing. And I understand, I've talked to many of you guys as providers about this concept, and I understand this is a hard thing to wrap your head around in terms of being able to sort of change your service model or incorporate this service into your current model. And so I'd like to, with this group, connect you guys with different resources, as well as potentially have some of folks that have done this change come and speak to this group to see how they have integrated this type of work into what they currently do. I was in DC a couple of weeks ago, and there were a couple of service providers in different states that have done this, and it actually helped them with the efficiencies of their organization and efficiencies of their dispatching. So I recognize that there's specific tools that you guys as service providers may need in order to kind of adapt your models to this kind of service. And so those are tools that I want to introduce to this group. There's different software companies as well as different ways of doing our routing that I want to introduce some experts that have really kind of made some great strides in order to help this. I know that within this group, you guys are burning and within the weeds of trying to basically play whack-a-mole of challenges within your organizations. And sometimes it's hard to kind of think about changing things and kind of thinking in a transformational way about what you do on a day-to-day basis. I just want you guys to know that we value what you currently do. We just want to be able to enhance and give you guys the tools to potentially help serve in this way, because we do see it as a very much so need in our community. So that's the end of the presentation. Is there any comments or thoughts on this? Melissa has something to say.
So I will just make a comment as this closes up. So again, if anybody has any comments, thoughts about what Laura has presented, which is excellent. But I wanted to remind Deanna and folks in the room that after this closes, the next part is where we kind of go around the room and everybody gives updates about what they're doing, and kind of does that ongoing kind of sharing from the mobility community at large. So just a reminder for that to happen next. But again, circling back to if people have comments specifically about all the ideas that were just shared and presented.
Thanks, Melissa. I have one more tool that I'm not going to go hugely in, but I'm going to send out to this group the link to this tool. One of the things that our consultants did for us is kind of, as I mentioned before, created maps to show sort of transit propensity, as well as looking at those origin and destinations. We also mapped, demographic data, major medical services, so hospitals, medical offices, those types of things, to see where fixed route and paratransit services go to, and where sort of our specialized transit providers are having to fill in the gaps there. So I'm going to share this with you guys. Let's see. So here are the different things and different layers that we have provided in this map. So as I mentioned, health facilities, El Paso County destinations, Teller County destinations, metro mobility destinations, because they have a rather large, robust program. The 2045 forecast for households, so that's something that we pulled from the current coordinated human service transportation plan. Low income households, our transit propensity data, and then our boundaries are on here so that you guys can better understand the different types of funding that are available. And so here is the map. Oh, so the previous screen that I just showed you was just the different types of layers. What I'm going to send you guys today is actually how you can navigate this map. So I just clicked on the layer list. You can actually, hide and unhide different things. So if you want to look at healthcare facilities, these are the major healthcare facilities that were identified mostly in El Paso County, because that's where we have the most healthcare facilities. And then say, for instance, we wanted to look at Mountain Metro's Metro Mobility service area in terms of these healthcare facilities. So you can kind of see where these major healthcare facilities land and whether they do land in a different agency's service area. So we have quite a few medical facilities in terms of our major medical facilities that are outside of Mountain Metro's service area for Metro Mobility. We can look at El Paso County transit propensity. Let me take this off. And so these that are deeply, these here that are deeply sort of colored are the ones that have higher transit propensity. So these, and then so say for instance, we want to overlay that with a funding source, right? So this 2010 census urbanized area. So this is the only area that 5310 funding can be utilized, right? So if we put that on there, it's kind of a little bit hard to see, but you'll see areas here that may have higher transit propensity that can't even be covered by 5310. So this is a great tool for you guys to be able to utilize. We also have PPRTA money. We can put that on there and take this off, this off. And so it'll show, it's hard to see right now, but you'll be able to see it a little bit better on your own. But you can actually see the PPRTA boundary and where that funding can be utilized. So do we think this is going to be a helpful tool? I'll let y'all play around in it. It's accessible to anybody. And so I'll send you guys the link to this today after the meeting. Any questions on this? All right. All right, Diana, that's great. I just saw your comment there that y'all track veteran information. We'll definitely get Nick connected with you guys. So that is it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate all the work you put into that and all the work that your team put into that. And it's a monumental lift. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to using the tool and digging in and kind of nerding out and, you know, playing with all the different filters. All right. So it sounds like the next piece of the equation is for us to kind of go around and talk about updates. So I will just kind of start us off from the Independent Center side. We are very much looking forward to hosting tomorrow the candidates for the upcoming election. We will be having a breakfast for the mayoral candidates in the morning and also a conversation with the candidates for city council. And you can bet your bottom dollar we will definitely be talking about transportation and transportation related issues as they relate to various populations that we serve in our community.
All right, for the folks that are on the Zoom, I'm going to call out Mark. Yes, thanks, Mark.
Oh, and of course my phone rings as I come on. I'm with Fountain Valley Senior Center, and we are put that in my drawer. And we are continuing to reach out to seniors in the area and encouraging them to come on board and letting them know about transportation and how we can help them out with getting them where they need to go and taking care of them with all their needs.
And feel free with this group as we're going around, talk about any like successes or challenges that you may be having. But this is time for us to kind of lean on each other. And if there's any, you know, tidbits that you may be able to share that may help another that's on this call, feel free to.
I'll go. I don't have any transportation specific updates, but in partnership with the Senior Resource Council, they're hosting like a Mardi Gras masquerade ball kind of dance at Goodwill's facility on Saturday. It's typically a senior 55 and above dance that I don't know if you guys have heard of, like the holiday dinner dance. They used to do that. So yeah, it's a great way to show off our facility too. It highlights our day program that looks like a town. There's a bank and an art studio and a gym, and it's really cool if you want to check it out or volunteer at all. And I can always send out the flyer. So thanks.
Kristen, did you say the Senior Resource Council, the SRC, is hosting that
Yes,
dam?
they're hosting it and it just happens
Okay.
to be at our facility. I don't know if I put like I have a PDF flyer. I don't know if I can put that in the chat. I'm really bad at technology. But I can try to do that while you guys are all talking, and maybe you can, once you click on it, it'll blow up and you can see the flyer.
And again, the date was this coming Saturday?
It's this Saturday from 3 to 5 o'clock.
Great.
I don't think there's transportation, but you can RSVP or email them if you have questions on any of the logistics and things like that.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right. More, we did Mark, Dick.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm muting here. You surprised me with my name. With community intersections, I think our success today is we're continuing to transport a couple students, one to Goodwill and one to Foundation for Successful Living from School District 20, and we do that 3 to 4 days a week. That's our success, turning into an open door transportation versus a closed door. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Melissa, did you have a question or your hand was just raised from previously engaging with this?
Oh, previous. I'm putting
Okay,
it down.
no worries. Diana?
Diana, you may be on mute.
Sorry, had a staff member stop in. So Teller Senior Coalition, I mean, this conversation today was awesome because we are doing a lot of next day and same day rides. And it has become very challenging with our current dispatch software and staffing. It's difficult. So I'm actually in the process of meeting with our dispatch software provider today, trying to find out if there's other opportunities with the program that will meet our needs, and then also starting to review other software programs. So that is one area we're working on. We do have the deviated bus route into southern Teller County now on Fridays, and we're actually getting a good ridership from that. That's part of our MMOF grant, but we started it early. We haven't received our MMOF grant funds yet. Once that happens, we'll be starting our other 4 routes throughout eastern part, western El Paso, and throughout the other parts of Teller County. I'm not sure if you're aware that Daybreak, which is an adult daycare facility here in Woodland Park, is closing down. And they have a bus that we are in the process of working with CDOT to be able to acquire that bus. So we're really excited about that, anxious to get that going. And that's about it for us. Thank you.
No, thank you. Valerie?
Hi, this is Valerie with Silver Key, and we have our intake has really exploded in the last week or so. Our calls have increased. We averaged around 3,300 a month, and just last week in 3 days, we had almost 600 calls. So we can't really pinpoint what that's about, but the need is definitely there. We've averaged around 2,400 rides a month, and last month we had to deny over 200 because we didn't have space available. We have had a great increase of volunteer drivers, so that's wonderful, but it's still a struggle. We're still waiting on our MMOF contract also. They had told us we'd have that by January, and we still don't have that. So that has put some of our projects on hold until that is recede. So
All
that's
right.
it.
Well, thank you. Emily.
Okay. Hi.
It's Rosa. I can do the update for Fountain.
Awesome.
So February, we had our campaign of Hero Day where riders can come and tell our drivers whose hero they are, and then they could ride for free or get a little pass to ride for the future. Every month we have these campaigns. We're trying to up our ridership. March is epilepsy awareness. So anyone that wears purple on the 27th of March can again ride for free or get a pass to ride. Another thing we've been doing is punch card rides, ride for 10 times, you get a free ride after the 10th, but we noticed people were punching their own cards. So we had to change to little stars or heart, punches. They kind of took advantage of that part. That was a learning experience right there. We're updating our snow and inclement weather policy, which we've kind of, I don't know, usually in the mornings they'd come in and we try to decide, is it safe enough to go out? We didn't want any of our riders to be left at a stop. So we're going to update that on determining when we should go out or not. We've had our team meeting with our drivers, and we've been going over CDL topics just in case if any of our CDL drivers were to be pulled for a surprise test, because I guess that's what they're doing now. So we just get a topic and talk and, kind of train them on a topic so they're, up to date. But that's all we're doing in Fountain.
Sounds like a lot. All right. So Eric. All right. I'm assuming that Eric stepped away from his video for a moment. Jacob.
Yeah, actually, Rosa, it's interesting you're doing that because literally I sent out a review of our own policies for snow and inclement weather literally just last Friday for input for our own updates. So I may want to actually check with you because we do have that connection there at Pikes Peak State College. So might be worth kind of reaching out and kind of discussing what you guys are doing along with what we're doing, and probably be helpful to know what each of us do. So I can reach out to you and get something set up if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely reach out to me.
Cool. Yeah, and so with over here, we did a recently February 1st, we did a transition of contractors. Our previous contractor left, or their last day was on the 31st, and then the new one Transit took over on the 1st of February. If you've watched our Facebook or anything along those lines, it's been pretty well, very positive news. Out of here at Transit, we've been able to restore a significant amount of service that had been reduced or cut. So right now, our weekday service, we only have 2 reductions, which is our Route 1 and 27. They're at 30-minute frequencies when they're scheduled for 15. That's all that remains on the weekday service. Saturdays is at full service. There's no reductions. Then our Sunday, we have been able to implement 6 of our routes that we were looking to start providing service in the fall service change. So we're slowly trickling into all that with the new contractor. We've seen the number of drivers increase at rates that I have not ever seen here in my 6-7 years at Transit. They're just, the level of training is spiked. And so we're very excited with that. And we're hoping for a new round of additional restorations here within the next month or so. But we're kind of playing that one by ear to see who comes in, who stays. When you have a lot of new drivers, you're kind of, waiting to see, okay, how many people will continue through versus those that drop out earlier on. So we're kind of watching that and having those discussions with our contractor, but by and large, very positive news on the driver front and the restoration of service. Last month at this time, we were reducing like on the daily basis. So it's nice to be in a different place now than we were then.
Hey, Jacob, that's a contractor for all of the transit or just paratransit?
So we have, so I was referring to our fixed route contract, which are the bigger buses. Transdev does do our paratransit as well as our maintenance. So they pretty much have what we call the big three, which is our maintenance, our paratransit, and our fixed route. We also have the shuttle service, which we contracted with them as a separate contract that's going to be folded into the overall fixed route contract in May. So it'll be back to those big three again. But we do, those go out for bid every 5 years or so, and we have to, either save the current contractor or you select a new one. So yeah, that's kind of on a rotation.
So again, what you're saying right now is it's one contractor that has taken on those three services right now. So,
Yeah.
and then the other ones are going to be coming up for bid. And this contractor could apply for those as well. But right now,
Yeah, and they are the current contractor for those other ones.
okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's a great company. My dad actually works for it in Knoxville.
Nice. Yeah, we've been very happy here. At least with the startup, it's been a really positive process. And you're always going to work out some of the kinks, and we're working over some of the things that, because the old contractor, RAPP, and then before that was McDonald. RAPP acquired McDonald mid-contract, but they've been here on site for the better part of nearly a decade at least. So when you're transitioning to a new contractor, you're dealing with some of those growing pains of some of this, the daily process. But we've been pretty happy with this startup so far. Few hiccups, but by and large, the fact we're restoring the amount of service we are is definitely a breath of fresh air after, at this point, nearly 3 years of ups and downs with service reductions and increases and back and forth. And we're hoping to increase back to our regular hours and stay there, not have to drop back again. And it's looking much better this time than any other time I've seen in the last 3 years.
That's awesome.
It's crazy to think it's been that long, 3 years of the pandemic, pretty much.
Anyone else in the room have any updates?
I just have a question to throw out to this group for future discussion. I recognize that there's actually been a lot of talk amongst providers lately that wanting to kind of look at different software options for their organizations. I know there's been a huge change with Route Match, which is used by several of our providers in the room. And also, Diana just mentioned too that she's looking into software to do some of these new things. So one of the things that we could do as a committee is actually reach out to some of these large providers and have them present at these meetings or at maybe a workshop with this group to kind of demo the different things that they do. And so if that's something that this group would be interested in, so that, we're looking at it from a larger group perspective and potentially be able to make some more intersections with other agencies in being on a similar platform or a sharing platform. That's something I'd like to offer out to this group. So is that something that folks would be interested in looking at from a group perspective, not necessarily just within your individual organization?
City of Fountain would be interested.
Awesome. Yeah, and I see that Dick said that they use Samsara and a couple other options.
Or Fountain Valley would be interested.
Okay, cool.
Laura, we would definitely be interested. It seemed, what's happening is once you contact someone, they never go away.
Yeah. And so, maybe one of those things that I can help get some of these folks to the table to talk with us as a group. There's been different ways that different groups have approached this. up in DRCOG, they actually hired a consultant team to do an assessment and work with the providers to identify different tools like this through a formal assessment. But it may be something that we could have just within this group, different presentations from some of these software companies so that we can better learn about their offerings, right? And also, you know, cost and those types of things, I think are important for each one of these folks on the group. We all have different needs, so not every group will have a one size fits all. There may not be a one size fits all for every group, but it's something that we could probably work on our end to get at least an introduction to some of these programs for the rest of you guys. I will put that on my list of to-dos.
All right, well, thank you so much for that offer. I think did I miss anybody in the virtual room? I just want to be cognizant of that. Okay. With that being said, we will move on to item number 7, which is membership appointments, the City of Fountain and Emily.
This is just Emily is going to has been designated by the City of Fountain to be their alternate. So Melissa, do we have to vote on this? I think that it's just a FYI item. Did we lose Melissa? Jared?
I mean, she's in there. So I mean, the board of directors ultimately approves these, and it is on a consent agenda for next Wednesday. Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Community guest and provider presentations. Do we have any today?
I'm going to call her out. Yeah, we do have a community guest. You want to introduce yourself? It's the face with the 3 lines coming out of it.
Is that working?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Do I have to keep my hand on it?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. We don't have this kind of tech in our meetings. My name is Dina Hartje, and I'm the board chair for the Resource Exchange. And Lois Landgraf had suggested that somebody come and find out what's going on down here, because just like you guys, we do a lot of going back and forth with legislators and our lobbyists up at the Capitol and everything. And it's always transportation. And I live in Monument, and I have a son with IDD. And somebody asked me a couple weeks ago, what do you do when you're not doing this volunteer job or that volunteer job? And I go, I am the transportation for Jack Hartje. Get him to wherever he needs to go. So yeah, I understand that's a tough area up there. Once you get north, you know, and up into Monument, it's a big problem for us up there. So very interested to see how engaged you guys are and what you're doing. And I just kind of wanted to sit back and get a feel, because we have roughly 9,000 clients in El Paso, Teller and Park right now. And this is a huge thing for them. So I'm so excited to see all the work you guys are doing on it and the conversations you're having. So this, I feel very positive about just watching this. So totally appreciate what you guys are doing. And thanks for letting me sit in.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Any other guests or provider presentations? No? All right. So seeing none, items for the next meeting.
Just a couple of things we had sent out in the previous meeting, some suggested changes to the bylaws. We've actually, we didn't have it ready for this meeting, but we met internally with our leadership team and basically went through those suggested changes and got a little bit of feedback, which will be coming to our executive team and talking through that feedback. No life-changing things about our suggested changes, but would like to send out before the next meeting a cleaner version of what those suggested changes are, so that this group can review that ahead of time and potentially vote on those suggested changes. Also, one of the things that I'll be bringing to this group, I know we talk a lot about specialized transportation, but there's some other items that we need to start talking about as well in terms of workforce programs and trying to get people to work through transit for multiple purposes, not just from a transporting individuals with disabilities or seniors to work, but also how do we think about as a network in serving the encouraging people to utilize transit. So that may be a different topic than these folks are on the call are used to. But we have some opportunities to potentially leverage some extra funding for different types of programs that may be tied to transporting individuals to work. So also, I think it would be great. It was great having you in the room. Yeah. From the resource exchange, because I think that there is a need to have more crossover within this group with community organizations that may not be providing transit services directly, but are connected to those folks that need to utilize services. And then also thinking about different ways that we could collaborate in the future to leverage more funding and availability of resources to each organization to provide for those needs. So it's be thinking about within this group if there's other players that need to be at the table in order for us to kind of enhance these conversations and coordination moving forward.
All right, fantastic. So if there's nothing else in terms of business for us today, I think it's probably safe to say we can adjourn. I have 10:47-ish, 10:48. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, kind of companioning me along this solo first meeting as the chair of the committee. So thank you for your patience and your grace. And we will adjourn 10:48. Have a wonderful rest of the week.